I gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from Drive to Survive with VP of Global Executive Marketing at Salesforce, Kexin Chen.
A driver's career has a finite amount of time to it.
We owe it to them to provide them with a good car.
You can be here for 20 more years. I can't.
Well, it's just quicker than our cars.
Every team goes into every new season with hope.
I will create the best Formula One team in the world.
Kexin, how the heck are you?
I'm good, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you on the show. We chat and Drive to Survive. We chat Salesforce marketing, executive marketing, everything in between. So why the heck did you choose Drive to Survive today?
Okay, well, Drive to Survive has completely transformed Formula One's business. I think about back in 2017, Formula One was an ailing business, to be honest. They were struggling to get sponsors. They were canceling races left and right. And then this Netflix partnership came about, Drive to Survive. And overnight, it felt like overnight, they were able to triple their viewership. And over, I think, half of the viewers now say that they came and credit Drive to Survive as the reason why they tune in for Formula One broadcast.
Who would have thought we would be where we are in the world today?
So it's pretty incredible in terms of how it's transformed their business. And I also think that what's unique about it is it's not really about car enthusiasts watching it anymore. They were able to really capture the masses and go mainstream, with the majority of their fans now being Gen Z as well as females. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited to dig into it. This is truly content sort of being the tail that wags the dog. Pretty incredible. Zooming out, tell us a little bit about your role as VP of Global Executive Marketing at Salesforce.
So as VP of Global Executive Marketing at Salesforce, I am focused on building and fostering our relationships with the C-suite buying committee, as well as executive decision makers globally for our top accounts. So what that means is that we get to engage these executives through third-party partnerships that span across thought leadership content, as well as events with partners like the World Economic Forum, Wall Street Journal, you name it, building also really high-profile hospitality programs with partners like F1. So my team also runs customer advisory boards and proprietary events to really understand each of these C-suite audiences and builds communities and understanding their challenges, and then translating that into how we then go to market, as well as our product roadmap.
It's so cool. I think it's just such an important role, especially in a company as big as Salesforce that manage so many different types of executives, so many different types of products. And the key word that you said there is communities, right? It's all about building these communities and maintaining them. And, I have this whole community framework that I've been working on but this idea of your community, your big C community is actually very many little C communities, right? It's your users, your, customer advisory board, your audience for your podcast, your super users in some case are their own, Salesforce admins obviously is massive. There's just so many different communities within a company of who you're trying to get in front of. And the executive one, you have to treat completely different. And there are a different set of rules that work and don't work, and the types of things that they're looking to dig into. And who better to chat with than you?
Excited.
Meredith, what the heck is Drive to Survive?
So it makes so much sense that we're talking about Drive to Survive today because according to GQ Sports, they refer to it as a marketing miracle.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
So as Kexin mentioned, this show really like unlocked the American audience, unlocked the female audience, and maybe even saved the entire sport. Gunther Steiner, who's the former principal or manager of the MoneyGram Haas team, said, "Years ago when I went to Formula One races, people were hardcore racing car enthusiasts. And now it's like people just like the vibe of Formula One, the entertainment factor."
You need those moments of real authenticity when real raw emotion, because it is an emotional sport, and it's an incredibly hard thing to do. So being on the inside of that is great, because it's you really relate to it, I think. And that was what the show's done. It's just opened up the humanity of the sport to a wider audience, because before it was just a bunch of people in helmets you never really got to know.
So in other words, like Formula One was really popular with like older men, specifically in like Europe, but really like elsewhere, it wasn't really that popular, especially in the US. And part of that is because before 2017, the CEO of Formula One Group, this guy, Bernie Ecclestone, he basically had like a stranglehold on the commercial rights. Like he didn't want to use social media to promote Formula One. He banned drivers from posting racing footage online, which seems like pretty strict and kind of archaic.
But the NFL does that too. The NFL does that
crazy.
right now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's like a big thing. Anyways, we'll get into this. But the idea is like what the NBA did is let basically anyone post their clips, whereas the NFL is extremely protective over that. And like these are the type of things that like completely strangle your business, as you mentioned. Like these are the type of things that like, and it's why so many fans of the NBA, quote unquote, don't even watch games, because they just like to watch clips and they like to follow the basketball players. They're celebrities in their own right. They have all these, romantic entanglements and other things and, other stuff. It's like if you can build a world outside of just what's on the track or on the court is like core to letting people in. The MLB has a huge problem with this too, because the MLB is extremely strong. So just from a merchandising standpoint, each individual MLB team doesn't actually own the rights to merchandising for their own stuff. It has to go through MLB. So I had the CMO of the Red Sox on a while ago. That group also owns Liverpool. Liverpool, they own the club. Like they can sell jerseys all over the world. The Red Sox, you can't do that. It has to go to the MLB store. So anyways, these things, when they end up becoming centralized versus decentralized, it makes a huge difference, and you don't get essentially user-generated content or an easy ability to do that stuff. And like those type of rights, like it all matters so much in this like modern digital age. Anyways, sorry to interrupt, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot about that in terms of like the ability to flip that on its head. Because if you look at this new generation of like Gen Zers, they want to know the athlete backstory. They want to be able to connect with them. And that's what's, I think, Drive to Survive has done. It's completely humanized, essentially, the race itself. And it's all based upon the drivers and being able to engage with them on social media in many ways. And so the fact that that wasn't permitted in the past, like I think that, to your point, it really stifles the ability for engagement and the building of fans. And so because they've been able to unlock that, I think that's largely why you see such a strong female audience as well.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think stifle is the perfect word for that too, Kexin. Like you're totally right. And it just stops everything in its tracks and keeps them from building a bigger audience, which like looking back, like you mentioned, 2017 was the year that like everything changed. And that's because this American company, Liberty Media, ended up purchasing a controlling interest in Formula One from Ecclestone. And part of that was like they had this big idea that they wanted to pitch a behind the scenes documentary about Formula One to Netflix. And so they had this big idea, but there were definitely some problems. There was a lot of uncertainty about the project. One big issue is that like Americans don't really get Formula One. Like they love NASCAR. They might know the Indy 500, but Formula One just had never really taken hold. That in the show really depends on the teams basically letting the filming crews up close and personal. Like they are in the nooks and crannies of all parts of the process. And so it was unclear if they, meaning like the teams, would sign off on the project, like especially Mercedes and Ferrari, who were kind of like dragging their feet. They were super hesitant. And that's because some of them had like other media deals going on, or they just were like unsure about the project. And the other thing is like nobody was sure if there would even be enough drama to sort of like hold up a show and to have it gain popularity? So that was the big question. And there has to be like an element of trust. So like things will just unfold and turn out okay. In an article that I read, speaking with producer James Gay-Reese, he said, you weren't quite sure if it could land, not only in terms of nuts and bolts of access, but more, can the creative vision bring it all together? But soon editor Matt Reg said that they would see that this was like Succession or Billions, major money, people with access to grind, and a cutthroat world.
I got pushed out by my teammates.
He said it's not the drama on the track, it's the drama off the track, which mirrors, Ian, what you said earlier. And I wrote, and boy, is there drama.
I have not more to fucking say to you guys. And if you don't like it, I don't need you here. Do not come back, please.
Which James Gay-Reese says they're in the same box every few weeks, meaning the drivers, and they all fucking hate each other. All you have to do is stand in the middle and point the camera.
Did you drop an F-bomb? No. What language did I use?
So they were like, this is a gold mine of content. And it really paid off. So Kexin, you mentioned some really awesome stats about like the female audience and everything. And to add to that, like the fan base had almost doubled since 2017, which I think maybe you mentioned earlier. During that period, the average age of Formula One viewers dropped by 4 years to 32, and female participation has doubled.
Give the people what they want, right?
Nipple.
So not only did the show become like insanely popular, but people were also tuning into the real races. So it sort of was working in two ways. Matt Reg says their approach is to show stories that are like, that is how Hollywood would do it, which I thought was like very on brand for us on Remarkable and a great lesson, like make Hollywood caliber content. So I think the success of the show really depends on the filming crew having that like close and constant access to the teams. Like James Gay-Reese says, we're part of the furniture, which I really liked. So they're really like in the background. And the show also depends on like the high stakes, the interpersonal relationships and drama, and even some like big personalities. So now the show is 6 seasons out, and Reg says as long as the characters and stories keep being as compelling, it could go on for many years. So Kexin, I'm wondering, like from your personal experience watching the show, what's the most compelling thing to you about it?
Yeah. So I think about like, when I think about the F1 races, only 1% of their fans actually make it to the race in person. And having been to these races in person, it is incredibly high energy and very, very intense.
Somehow they avoid contact. Sainz is back ahead. And Charles Leclerc, that could have been nasty.
It's like everywhere around you, it's loud as the cars are driving by. You literally have to wear like earplugs or else you're going to go deaf. People are just roaming around the track and excited. And I think a lot about that energy is captured through the show, the intensity, the competition, to your point. And there's a lot of lessons learned from that when it comes to marketing. So it's that storytelling element. I think that they're really able to focus on the drivers and the dynamics within and between the teams. Like recently watching it, we also are a sponsor of McLaren and seeing Zach Brown and Lando and the discussions of like, is it time for him? And then, I mean, we just won Miami, so it's not time for him. But it's like the ability to capture that high intensity and pressure is incredible. And I think that's what's made it successful, is just the ability to have great storytelling. And then the other part is capturing it in real time with those quick snapshots on social media. So I think they've done a really good job with, to your point, Liberty Media focused on digital engagement and stepping out of how do we actually not just think about the TV broadcasts, but also think about all of the social channels we have and get these drivers out on TikTok, on Snap to reach that younger audience. And so I think it's been incredibly impressive. Like I had a customer of mine in our hospitality program, and I asked him like, hey, you know, are you a big F1 fan? Is that what drove you to come to our program? And he's like, no, I'm not that big of a fan. But my 14-year-old daughter almost cried when I told her I was coming. And I'm really excited to take all the swag and all these experiences and tell her about it. And so I think that just, again, captures like, this is now becoming a family sport. And that's in many ways what's amazing about it, is it's intergenerational. And then the last part is I'm also very impressed, to your point, about like how they've gone into global expansion. The US is one thing, like they didn't have as many races in the US. And so they not only intentionally paired the Netflix launch with that, but then they also thought about what races have to occur in Americas and where do they have to be so that we can really make that mark with this audience. And so they launched Miami. And then recently last year, they launched Vegas. So it's really cool to see how they've thought about that strategy end to end. And what's also cool is it's not just the US, like there's been massive expansion in China as well as Brazil with, I think like China has like over 14 million fans at this point or something absurd. So it's been really cool to just watch how Drive to Survive is now like really taken F1 global in many sense.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Olympics every year or every 4 years being truly a national event, especially in America. I mean, all over the world, obviously, but especially in America with the way that it's televised and has been for years, is it's race, human interest story, human interest story, human interest story, right? I remember all the times my family sitting, on vacation somewhere, and you come back from the beach or whatever, and you turn on the TV and you see these human interest stories, and the whole family is like 4-quadrant film, right? Your grandparents, your parents, you, the younger kids, like everybody is there for this thing. And we don't care about swimming, except for, every 4 years when Katie Ledecky's doing it. So it's like, it's this ability that the story is what brings everybody in on the same thing. And it builds anticipation because even if it's for a moment, you want your favorite to win. And like, that is what is so captivating about sports, is that somebody wins at the end of the day. And you don't care who wins until you know who they are, unless you're a diehard fan. And so like if you're a diehard Yankees fan, and you probably will be for the rest of your life, and maybe your kids will be, or maybe they won't, you don't really like, yeah, you like players, but at the end of the day, like you cheer for the uniform. And like, soccer is much the same way, like global football of like you cheer for the shirt, not necessarily the player. But for casuals, it's about stars. And like when you think about the biggest moments in sport, it's, Steph Curry versus LeBron. It's, Katie Ledecky versus the world. It's Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson. Like these, these iconic, person versus person, pitting these people against each other, Brady versus Manning, all those things. To the point that, hey, Manning switches teams, and guess what? It's still Brady versus Manning, and that is what sells, right? And I think that is like what they got so right with this, is like the drivers are super intense.
I need to calm down because I'm going to do something stupid.
They hate each other, and they really want to win. And then you throw in the fact that this is like a fast, crazy, like death-defying sport that's super dangerous. And that keeps you at the edge of your seat too, that like anything can happen. People have died, all of that. And then all of a sudden you get this sport that used to be a fringe sport, now is at the top of, in the zeitgeist. And I think it all just boils down to like stars sell. That's what brings people together, and then they can talk about it. Because the thing is, the diehards need to be able to talk to the casuals, right? You need a reason when like my friend texts me and he's like, hey, like, is Christian Pulisic that good? And you're like, oh, he's interested in soccer now. He's like, is the US team good this year? Like, yeah, oh yeah, but there's this star player, like that's what casuals want to know, is like, who should I be following? And you're like, oh, this person's super cool. They just had a baby and like all this stuff. And, like they're married to someone who's also famous, and like, all these things, like those are what bring people in. And I think that it's like, we forget all the time that you have to make stars. Like stars are made. And even if they're a robot, right? It's like, that's still interesting in its own way.
Yeah. And that's so true. Like I also think about like the underdog story.
Yeah.
Like in many ways, that challenge, someone that's struggling and then they make it to the top. You see that day in, day out with these drivers and certain ones. And so it's all about like, it hooks the casuals, it gets them talking. And then from there, as you see them move up, like you look at like a Lewis Hamilton when the seasons first started, that was really impressive to see how that turned around. And everyone was just struck by him as a star once that happened.
Lewis, you're much more than a racing driver. Much more than the 7-time world champion. You are one of the people that lead this team forward.
Yeah, my other marketing point here is confusion equals no sale. And like, you have to simplify everything to its like most elemental sort of level. And like something like soccer, for example, which, is super popular in the world, but not as popular in the US, it's really confusing, right? You don't know, like there's not one tournament that you decide everybody is the winner, like most sports are in America. It's like there's a bunch of different tournaments and they all matter in their own way. And there's multiple different types of trophies. And there's, all these other leagues and all this stuff. So people are just kind of like generally like, oh, this is just kind of confusing. And I think that they had to demystify what Formula One was to explain like what this whole thing is. But also like in racing, the person who finishes at the first wins, right? So it's not that complex. Like boxing, it's like the person who's standing up after the end of the fight is always the winner, right? And like sometimes there's a decision that gets made for them. That's why like movies in Hollywood are always boxing movies and driving movies and these things where it's like they have a very clear conclusion to the events. And if it's not that way, then they dig super deep into the human interest. And even still, they probably do that because like it's much easier to shoot, from a cinematographer standpoint, two people in a boxing ring than it is to shoot, a football team. So there's like virtually never been a good football movie. There's a few exceptions there, like Varsity Blues is amazing, but it's so hard to shoot that sort of stuff. And then so what does the NFL do? They create Hard Knocks. And Hard Knocks is a perfect show because it's about all the people who may or may not make the team. And it gives you all the inside footage to all the stars that you've never seen be this casual, or you've never seen behind the scenes. You've never seen the coaches. And then you don't know, which one of these people is actually going to make the team. And then after Hard Knocks is over, like you don't really care and it's football season and then you go on to the next thing. But like this sort of like undercover piece there I think is so important. And okay, so this brings up my final point here. This reminds me of like the undercover nature of like letting people under the hood and see the real and shoot that. It reminds me of the CEO and the CFO talking about training your employees. It's like, what happens if we train the employees and they leave? And it's like, and then the CEO says, what if we don't and they stay? It's the same mentality for this sort of stuff. It's like, well, if we let them under the hood, what if they see something bad? And it's like, what if we don't let them under the hood and then they never come back, right? And it's like, that is what a lot of the sports intentionally did, was say, we're not going to give people access to the athlete. MLB is the perfect example of this. They never give access to any of the players, and the sport slowly is fading year after year after year because of a lack of interest, because they don't want there to be stars. They don't care. Whereas sport like Formula One, which had no stars globally, now has mega stars because they let them under the hood. That's long-winded, but I got there.
Well, I just think it's like, it comes back to that human first element. Like at the end of the day, like people just want to see stars. Like that's what they're going to tune in for, particularly when it comes to entertainment on TV.
And they want to be able to talk about it with someone. I mean, that's why we called the show Remarkable, right? The whole point is you make something good enough that you have to talk about it with someone else. And you can't talk about, like at the water cooler, something that nobody is talking about, right? So it's like inherently we want to connect when we watch something we like. We want to go find a community of people that is also talking about that thing so that we can say, oh my, did you see that? And historically, men, not so good with our feelings. So we go and talk to another guy who say, hey, did you see what the Warriors did? Are they going to bring back Draymond or not? That's like, so we have something to talk about other than our feelings. But, it's something that brings people together that historically, like, maybe they don't have something to talk about, but we seek that. Like, that's why we watch stuff, is to, connect with other people about it. And when you find the other diehard and like, if you find two people that both like Formula One now, it's like not as rare as it used to be where it's like, oh my gosh, you watch Formula One, but people are super into it. Right. And it's like, that's what you want.
Yeah. And I think that's actually why we sponsor it in many ways. It's because we know there is that connection, and that is the first spark in conversation of bringing all of these different customers together with us. We're just here to create that platform for that connection. And from there, we know it's going to spark into more.
Yeah. And I think, my final piece on this is they also chose a partner with a technology platform that people consume in that way. Like, it's perfect to partner with Netflix for this particular thing because Netflix is about premium content. It's about putting something that people are paying for in front of them that's so good that it has all this stuff. And if they had gone with a different streaming provider, it still would have worked, I think. But it's like, I don't think it would have been in the same sort of way that it was, perhaps. But if they had tried to do this through like YouTube Shorts or something, it would not have worked, right? And it's like Netflix was the perfect partner for this, I think under the circumstances that they were dealing with. And like, gosh, what a success. It's just unbelievable. All right, switching gears to your work at Salesforce. Obviously, you think about getting in front of executives all the time. What are your tips and tricks here for engaging communities in the same way that Drive to Survive engaged millions?
Yeah. So, I think a lot about knowing your audience at the end of the day and what makes them tick. So similar to Drive for Survive, in many ways, the executive audience in the same vein, key is to just understand that audience and their pain points, the challenges, what's keeping them up at night, who are their celebrities, who are the people that they want to see succeed. And for them, in many ways, what we've noticed is if we are just trying to sell to them, it's not going to work. And so we have to ensure that we're balancing educating them on the value of our platform and why it's going to completely change their organization. But also we want to build a really trusted relationship and figure out how to arm them with what it's going to take for them to actually be the champion and the star at their organization for bringing Salesforce to. And it's a hard challenge to balance the two. And sometimes they're in conflict. So for what we do, we really make sure that we're convening the right people, their peers, to help tell that story of what have they done with us, how have they seen success, where were the pitfalls to watch out for along the way, as well as we bring in the right luminaries and celebrities and experts that can educate them on what is it that they need to look out for in the industry and landscape that are going to better position them as individuals as well as leaders to navigate for their business.
It seems like you and like part of your strategy is choosing things that people love. Like I'm simplifying it, but it seems like you like to sponsor things that people are really, really passionate about. Is that fair?
In some ways, I think of it at the end of the day, like when I think about executives, they're highly networked, they're super busy. So they get offers left and right for different things. So it's essentially like, why are they going to dedicate time to us? And generally that comes down to, it has to be something they already love. So it's got to be related to a hobby of theirs, or they see some ultimate benefit for themselves in it, in terms of they're going to learn, they're going to meet the right people that they want to meet, that they haven't been able to get access to. And so related to that, we do a ton of persona research. We do a ton of analysis on where they're already convening and who they're interested in meeting to be able to formulate those type of partnerships.
Walk me through the type of engagement where, you're going to Formula One and you're saying like, hey, we want to be part of this. We want in.
So for us, oftentimes it starts with a lot of deep-rooted analysis and understanding whether our audience is actually going to be at those activities and activations. So first and foremost, I'm looking at, number one, it's normally reactive versus proactive in some ways, unless we have like a very key partner. We're like, we know it's you. This is it. Mm-hmm. Generally, it's kind of like we get approached and first question is, okay, well, let's see your audience base. Let's look into that. And let's see where the alignment is with our top accounts, with the specific C-suite that we're going after. And it's understanding, do they actually have the convenings and gatherings of that audience that we want? And I'd say rarely do the companies do. From there, if they do, then it's like, okay, let's get into the content. Content is king first and foremost. So what are the thematics? What are the key areas that we line on? I think it's a little easier to step out of like the F1 world and think about some of the media partners where we're talking about digital transformation or AI readiness. And so making sure that there's alignment there. If you think about going to an event and everyone's talking about race cars, but we want to talk about hippos, like that's not going to work. So
right.
Like figuring out, are we going to be talking about the same thing? And how do we ensure that we're relevant and a strong, provocative conversation is going to be created from that engagement? Once we know those two are in alignment, then from there, it's really about thinking through the ways of engagement. So what I mean by that is oftentimes if you look at sponsorships or traditional sponsorships, people are like, yeah, you get to be featured here with your logo and let's have a booth and let's talk about scans and have you participate in this way. I rarely will do a booth. Basically, I hear that and I've already tuned out. We're not logo scans as well. So for me, it's really about how do I have the ability to have relevant, engaging conversations? And what are the right ways of engagement to make sure that we're going after quality over quantity and having those top executives that we want to reach in that room with us in live discussion? So that's really the focus in terms of what I look at.
What's funny is, don't you think that every community should be doing that, right? Like, that's part of the thing is like, it doesn't matter if you're selling to end users or, mid managers or, senior execs. Is like, we should be trying to stand out as much as possible, be as memorable as possible, be as unique as possible, drive as much value as possible, and not just check the box,
Yeah. Well, I think that's really that quality over quantity. I think it's really easy to try to be everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to this, it's really about focus. And if you want to be able to create a memorable moment in human connection, you have to know where your focus is. So for me, it's like, I know I'm focused on the exec. I may not hit the admin with this experience. So how do I make sure it's relevant to the exec, both from an altitude standpoint, the right people in the room standpoint, and the right partner that I'm coming into that engagement with?
When you talk about like right people in the room, is there anything that you found, like I was at a Salesforce dinner years ago and I was sitting next to, I'll just say he was a big CIO of a company that was very old. It's like a 150-year-old company, European company. And he was like, we were talking because I was hosting a CIO-focused podcast for Salesforce at the time. And he was like, dude, I got to tell you, nobody at my company cares about IT. Like he was like, I talked to some of these other CIOs and he's like, they got bought in, they got this, they got that. He's like, I don't have any of that. He's like, I just got to figure out how to get like a little bit of buy-in from someone to convince them that sort of like, I'm not just, the guy who, tells them to update their passwords. And it was just kind of that moment in time where, and it's like that type of stuff, you just can't read a blog post on that. You know what I mean? It's like, he's not Googling like how to get executive buy-in. He's like, he needs to hear from a peer in a private setting where no one is recording. Like, how did you do that?
100%. And again, this comes back to that dual challenge of how do we really aid those around us to be the champions and sponsors for their organizations. And that's largely what we try to do is time and time again, when we look at attendee survey results, it's always people are coming to our events to network and meet their peers. They want to be able to talk through the challenges and priorities they have and figure out how can they then take that back and activate it within their own businesses, their teams, and kind of champion whatever it is that they're trying to get through in terms of their initiatives. And the other is particularly right now, just staying and keeping pace with the amount of change, particularly in technology with AI, and knowing what to do about it and how to experiment. So I think a lot about that in terms of like our job and my team's job is creating the platform for those engagements and making sure that everyone has alignment on like what's going to be discussed around that challenge. So whether it's digital transformation, whether it's AI readiness, whether it's just leading through reskilling and upskilling. It could be very different topics. It could be geopolitical risk because there's so much of it right now. So ultimately making sure that everyone who's participating and signing up to be in that room, they at least know what they're signing up for.
I love that. Kexin, wonderful having you on the show. So good. And what a perfect topic. Obviously, our listeners can go to salesforce.com to learn more. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Anything to plug?
It's been awesome being on the show, Ian. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to learn more about your writer's room for the CMO stuff later. And then, I think we're about to have Dreamforce. It's our biggest event. It's like our Super Bowl. So for those who are available, I hope you can make it and you can go check that out on salesforce.com as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kexin. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.